I didn't see the ships fall from the sky. I heard them. Long before I ever looked up, I heard the thunder roll in, like the clouds were screaming. The dogs in our neighborhood went crazy. Sirens started echoing in the distance. The ground shook just enough to make you feel like your legs forgot how to stand still. My little brother ran outside first, barefoot. He was holding that busted remote control truck that didn't even work anymore. Thought maybe it was thunder or a storm. It wasn't. I stepped out onto the porch, and I swear to God, the sky was broken. Not dark, not gray, just wrong. There was this massive shadow cutting across the clouds. Quiet now, silent. So silent it hurt your ears. Then I saw it. The first one. Long and jagged like a blade turned upside down, glowing dull red along its edges. It wasn't flying. It was hovering. Like gravity didn't matter. Just sitting there over our city like it owned the air. I didn't know it then. But that was the moment Earth died. My mom grabbed the both of us and screamed for the basement. We had one of those old storm shelters. Concrete, moldy, smelled like dead mice and gasoline. Never thought we'd need it. Never thought it would be our coffin. The first blast hit downtown. You ever seen glass fall like rain? Every window for miles exploded in that instant. I could hear people screaming, car alarms, sirens, all chopped up by this low, pulsing hum coming from the sky. It felt like being underwater with a migraine. The power died 10 minutes later. Then came the screams, not scattered, not distant. Close. Close enough to tell they were coming from people you might have passed in the grocery store or sat next to in a movie theater. We stayed in that shelter for 2 days. My dad wasn't with us. He worked out near the military base. Mom tried to radio him, but all we got was static, then silence. By the 3rd day, we ran out of water. By the 4th, Mom went topside. Said she'd find help. She never came back. I was 17. My brother was 10. That was the first time I held a real gun. It wasn't like in the movies. I didn't feel strong. I felt empty. Like my body was just a shell walking around, doing things my brain didn't want to think about. I scavenged from the houses nearby, found a pistol in a garage safe, buried under boxes of Christmas decorations, took it, loaded it, and tried not to cry in front of my brother. He asked me where Mom went. I told him the truth. She's dead. He didn't cry. He just nodded, then curled up on the mattress in the shelter and stared at the ceiling for hours. That night, he stopped talking. He wouldn't say a word to me for 3 days. I thought he'd broken. But something snapped in both of us. Not like a breakdown. No, more like a fire. A small, dark fire that said, they don't get to walk away from this. That was the start of the resistance. Not some global military operation or brilliant tactical genius. It started with 2 kids in a storm shelter, a stolen pistol, and too much grief to carry quietly. We weren't soldiers. Not then. Just survivors. But survivors become killers when survival isn't enough. And when Earth realized there would be no help coming from above, no allies, no saviors, we changed. Humanity got mean. Humanity got angry. And anger, that was something the Empire didn't plan for. Because the thing about humans is, we don't forget who made us bleed. We return the favor. We didn't bury my mom. There wasn't enough left to bury. Just her necklace. I found it 3 days later when I finally worked up the nerve to search the neighborhood. She never took it off. Silver chain, little glass charm filled with fake gold flakes. I remember buying it for her with what little I saved up from mowing lawns. I found it in the middle of the road, blackened on one side and broken on the other. I held it in my hand and stood there for a long time. Cars were flipped, homes burned. A dog limped past me, bloody paw prints on the pavement. The world smelled like ash and iron and rot. I didn't cry. Not really. I just stared at that necklace and said the words out loud, even though no one was around to hear them. "You bastards killed her." It didn't matter if they understood English. Rage doesn't need translation. I put that necklace in my coat pocket and made my way back to the shelter. My brother was sitting against the wall, hugging his knees, eyes blank. I gave him some old cans I'd found in a nearby garage. He didn't say anything. He hadn't said anything since the day I told him the truth, so I talked for both of us. I told him about the alien ship I saw burning on the horizon, told him about the people I ran into who were heading north, following rumors of a resistance camp near the mountains. Said maybe we could go. Maybe we could find more people like us. He just nodded, like a machine. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how the Empire came in so clean, surgical, like they had a plan, like this wasn't the first planet they'd crushed under their boots. But Earth wasn't like those other worlds. I don't say that out of pride. I say that because Earth was already cracked. We had 1,000 problems before they showed up. Poverty, war, greed, corruption, you name it. But that also meant we were already used to pain, and pain makes monsters out of men. The next morning we packed what we could carry and left. The city was a graveyard. Cars littered the streets, their doors open, their windows shattered. Blood dried in long smears on the sidewalks. Fires still burned in some places. And those ships, those massive floating nightmares, they didn't leave. They just hovered, watching, waiting. Like the reapers of a crop that wasn't done dying yet. I heard stories. Survivors whispered that they weren't just killing, they were harvesting, that they needed something from us, our DNA, our nervous systems, our brains. Sounded like horror stories. Probably were. But I believed them, because I saw what they did to people they didn't kill right away. I saw the hanging cages. I saw the blue light that left bodies twitching like broken puppets. We moved at night. Always at night. My brother started talking again on the 5th day, just a little. He asked, "Why us?" I didn't have an answer. We finally found the resistance camp 2 weeks later. They weren't soldiers, not really. A few ex-Marines, a couple of farmers with hunting rifles, mechanics, nurses, civilians with hate in their blood and nothing left to lose. They didn't trust us at first. 2 skinny teenagers with hollow eyes and no supplies. Could have been bait for a trap. But then I showed them what I brought. A small handheld console I pulled off a dead Empire soldier. The thing glowed with pulsing veins of green, like it was alive. And when they saw that, their eyes lit up. Turned out we weren't the only ones fighting. There were other camps, other cities, scattered, broken, but fighting. We had no leaders, no government. The internet was gone. Satellites burned or jammed. But word still got around. On foot, on bikes, sometimes in hacked shortwave radios. Earth wasn't submitting. We were sharpening our teeth. One night, an older guy named Brennan handed me a rifle, said I had the look. I asked him, "What look?" He said, "The look of a kid who lost too much to stay soft." That same night, they showed me how to shoot. Real lessons, not YouTube tutorials or video game instincts. Real recoil, real noise, real blood when we went on our first raid. It was a recon squad, Empire infantry, tall things, wrapped in biometal and covered in flexible plates that hissed when they moved. No mouths, no eyes, just those glowing discs in their heads, like halos worn inside the skull. We hit them in the trees. 5 of us, crouched in mud, holding our breath. When Brennan gave the signal, we lit them up. My first bullet hit nothing. Second one missed, too. The third tore through one of their arms, and I swear the blood was silver. It steamed in the air like smoke. The thing turned toward me, raised a blade that folded out from its wrist, and ran straight for us. I froze, just locked up. Brennan tackled me out of the way and emptied his shotgun into its chest. The thing kept twitching after it fell, like it was trying to finish a thought. I watched him walk over and stomp on its head until it cracked. He looked at me and said, "Don't freeze next time. You freeze, people die." I nodded, heart slamming in my chest like a hammer. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, because I wanted to do it again. Killing them didn't feel like war. It felt like justice. It felt good. Word spread that a fleet was forming in orbit, bigger than anything the Empire had deployed in centuries. A show of force. We'd cost them too much already. Earth, as they saw it, was a cancer they needed to burn out completely. But they didn't understand what Earth had become. They didn't understand what they'd created. They thought they were facing scattered rebels and frightened civilians. They were wrong. They were facing a new breed of human, born in fire, raised in ruin, hardened by loss. We didn't want peace. We wanted revenge. We started learning their tech. A guy named Ortiz, former drone engineer, cracked open the device I'd brought and figured out how to use it as a signal blocker. Suddenly, their patrols couldn't coordinate. Their eyes in the sky started going blind. A girl named Lena modified scavenged railguns to punch through their armor. Another guy, Rhodes, started reprogramming their drones to fight for us. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were evolving. And with every fight, we took something from them, a weapon, a tactic, a reason to hate harder. I kept my mom's necklace in my pocket every raid. When I killed, I thought about her. I thought about my brother, about the other kids who didn't make it out of the cities, about the people who screamed and begged and burned, and I smiled every time one of those metal bastards fell. Then came the broadcast. It hijacked every signal we had, radio, visual, even old pre-Empire frequency bands. A voice, cold, robotic, synthetic. Earth, you have one solar cycle to surrender. Compliance will be rewarded. Resistance will result in annihilation. I looked around at the people in our camp. Dirty faces, hollow eyes, scars, blood-stained clothes. None of them looked afraid. They looked ready. My brother, he was different now too. Carried a knife he made himself. Said fewer words, but they all cut deep when he did speak. He walked up to me after the broadcast, handed me one of our modified EMP grenades, and said, "Next time you see one, don't freeze." I didn't smile, I just nodded. Because I knew what came next wasn't a battle. It was a message. Earth wasn't theirs, and we weren't prey. We were the storm. They gave us a day to surrender. One solar cycle, they called it. Like time was just another thing they thought they controlled. But you can't measure human rage in hours. You measure it in scars. In silence. In the way a man holds his breath just before he pulls a trigger. So we didn't use that day to beg. We used it to prepare. We fortified the camp. Reinforced the perimeter with metal scrap and polymer plating salvaged from dead patrol units. Ortiz built a makeshift turret from the guts of a downed scout drone and mounted it on a busted water tower. Lena rigged trip mines through the woods, made from old car batteries and Empire energy cores. And me? I volunteered for the suicide team. They didn't call it that, but we all knew what it meant. There was a landing hub 3 miles out, one of the many outposts they used to drop off troops and supplies. Word was they were loading something big there, something they were going to use on us once the deadline passed. Maybe a ship-to-ground cannon, maybe a bioweapon. No one knew for sure. Didn't matter. Our job was to hit it first. No glory, no backup. Just 6 of us, blacked out in mud and ash, crawling through a forest that was already half dead. We moved like ghosts, no talking, no light. Just hand signals and the rhythm of each other's breath. The woods had gone quiet weeks ago. No birds, no bugs, no wind. Even nature seemed scared. Half a mile from the outpost, we found the first pile. Human bodies, stacked like garbage. burned down to bone and melted clothing. Kids, parents, old folks. I recognized one of them. Her name was Mara. She used to bring food to the camp, smile like it still meant something. She gave my brother a scarf once. Said it would keep the cold out when the mountains got worse. That scarf was still tied around his arm. Now she was just a blackened rib cage and empty eye sockets. I didn't say anything. Just knelt, took a deep breath, and pushed forward. We made it to the outer edge of the hub just before midnight. Empire soldiers patrolled in tight formations, movements precise, inhuman. Their armor gave off a soft whine, like turbines spinning under their skin. The plan was simple. Rhodes and Pharaoh would plant charges along the east fence. Cruz and I would sneak inside and sabotage the fuel cells. Lena and Graves would provide sniper cover from a ridge overlooking the compound. It was tight, dirty, but it was war, and war doesn't wait for perfect. Cruz was ex-police, big guy, quiet, the kind of man who never looked angry, but you could tell it lived in him, like coals under a dying fire. He nodded to me once before we moved. We slipped past the perimeter using one of Ortiz's jammers. Just enough static to make the cameras blink for 30 seconds. Inside, the place looked like a factory from hell. Massive crates, biochambers filled with floating bodies, some still twitching, half alive. Alien tech fused with human organs, nerve strands wired into machines. I couldn't breathe. "Keep moving," Cruz said. First time he spoke all night. We found the fuel cells near the center, glowing tubes of green and red, pulsing like veins. I pulled the modified charge from my pack, hands shaking, not from fear, from fury. This was what they were building. This was what they were doing with our people. I set the timer. Cruz stood watch, his rifle raised. We were 5 minutes from hell. Then something went wrong. A light clicked on above us, not a motion sensor, not an alarm. A voice. "You do not belong here." It wasn't coming from a speaker. It was coming from inside our heads. I dropped to one knee, clutching my skull. My brain felt like it was vibrating, like someone was scraping the inside of my thoughts with knives. Cruz screamed, fired blindly into the shadows. One of them stepped out of the dark, bigger than the others, 8 feet tall, armor black and veined with red, a crest along its head like a crown made of blades. It moved like liquid steel. Cruz didn't hesitate. Emptied a full mag into its chest. The thing didn't flinch. It lunged forward, grabbed him by the neck, and ripped him in half. Not clean, not quick, just tore him like wet paper and tossed the halves aside. I stood frozen, gun in my hand, heart in my throat. The thing turned to me, tilted its head. Its voice, still in my head, whispered, "You fight like animals. You die like insects." I fired. 1 shot, then 2, then 5. Didn't matter. Then the timer hit 0. The entire world exploded behind me. Flames swallowed the fuel cells. Shockwaves blasted us both off our feet. I hit the ground so hard I saw stars, heard nothing but the ringing of my own heartbeat. I crawled, broken, dazed. The thing was still alive, burning, smoking, but alive. I reached for my last grenade. EMP core, ripped from the crawler we downed last week. The thing staggered toward me, one arm hanging by a thread of sinew and wire. I smiled. "Eat this, you son of a—" Boom! The pulse hit. The creature spasmed, let out a sound that made the air shiver, then collapsed into twitching limbs and sparks. I limped away, ribs cracked, ears bleeding. Lena found me a mile out, covered in soot, dragging my rifle, barely breathing. She didn't ask what happened. She just looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not a kid anymore." That night, the sky turned red. The Empire retaliated. Orbital strikes flattened 3 cities. They called it punishment. We called it proof. proof that we had made them bleed. And for the first time, they feared us, because we weren't just surviving anymore. We were teaching them what it meant to piss off humanity. They buried crews in the rocks behind the camp. Not a proper grave. We didn't have time for proper anymore. Just a pile of stones, a mark on a tattered piece of tarp, and a bullet casing placed on top. That was our version of a tombstone now. Lena said a few words, short, cold. He fought. He didn't run. That was it. No one cried. No one bowed their heads. We didn't have tears left for the dead. After the raid on the hub, the resistance changed. Something inside all of us cracked. The enemy was no longer some faceless swarm in the sky. Now we'd seen their labs, their work, their cruelty up close. They weren't conquerors. They were harvesters. And we weren't just resisting anymore. We were hunting. Ortiz began building what he called the Howl Bombs. Explosives with a frequency modifier that caused Empire tech to scream before detonating. Psychological warfare, he said. They did it to us. Now it was our turn. Rhodes started capturing their scouts alive, torturing them, hooking their minds into his hacked translator module to dig for intel. Most of them died after a few hours, brain matter leaking from their cracked visors. But we learned things, how they moved, how they thought, how afraid they were becoming. They didn't understand us, couldn't predict us. That made us dangerous. The Empire operated on structure, obedience, precision. But humans? We were chaos with a trigger finger, and we were getting better at it every day. One night, Lena found me sitting alone by the creek. My ribs still ached from the blast. I hadn't said much in days. She tossed a cigarette at me. I didn't smoke, but I lit it anyway. "You got something broken in you," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "But it's useful now." She didn't argue. Neither of us looked at the stars. Not anymore. The sky wasn't a place for dreams. It was where our nightmares came from. That same night we got word from the northern outpost. Overrun. 70 dead. Burned alive. Only one survivor. A kid. Maybe 12. When he arrived at our camp, he didn't speak. Just sat by the fire, staring at the flames. His hands were shaking. I sat next to him, offered him food. He didn't take it. Then I saw his eyes. Hollow, glassy. Same as mine when Mom died. Same as my brother's. I didn't ask what he saw. I already knew. The Empire wasn't just killing now. They were punishing. Dragging people from the rubble and executing them in front of their families. Leaving survivors on purpose, witnesses, to spread fear like a virus. And still, no one surrendered. If anything, more people were joining us. Former bankers, grocery clerks, high school dropouts, factory workers, men and women with nothing left but rage and rope. One guy, Nolan, used to work construction, lost his wife in the first week. Now he was our go-to for building field traps that turned patrol routes into slaughterhouses. Another, a former EMT named Crowley, started using Empire plasma cutters for field amputations. Burned his own hand off to stop the infection after a supply run went bad. Didn't scream once. That's the kind of men we were becoming. Every scar was just a reminder. We were still alive, and they hadn't broken us. Then came the message. Not from the Empire, from us. Ortiz figured out how to hijack one of their satellites. Only for a few minutes, but it was enough. We broadcast across every Empire frequency, every helmet, every HUD, every screen. The image was simple. Cruz's body, ripped in half, blood frozen in the snow. Then my voice. "You think you're gods, but you bleed like us, and we will make you bleed." We ended it with a live feed of us executing one of their officers. Unmasked, screaming. The knife cut slow, and Ortiz made sure the audio spiked in their earpieces. Was it ugly? Hell yes. But war doesn't give points for mercy, and we were past mercy now. The next week, something changed. We started seeing less patrols, less drones, less movement in the skies. They were regrouping, or planning something worse. That's when Rhodes came to me. "We have a shot," he said. "At what?" "Their relay station, North Ridge. It's how they coordinate strikes in this whole quadrant." "Let's hit it," he shook his head. "It's suicide, guarded, shielded, underground." "Then why tell me?" He looked at me long, real slow. "Because you're the only one mean enough to pull it off." I didn't argue, didn't even blink. That's what I'd become now, the weapon they send when death isn't fast enough. We moved under cover of a storm, wind howling like wolves, snow cutting across our faces like blades. Just me, Lena, and two others, Reed and Harlan. Good men, dead eyes, steady hands. We reached the ridge by dawn. The station was built into the mountain like a tumor. Black steel. No windows, just blinking lights and that low hum you could feel in your teeth. We went in through the maintenance shaft. Narrow crawl, metal freezing against our clothes, pipes dripping something foul-smelling and thick. Inside, it was worse. Empire corridors were like nightmares given form, clean, sterile, but pulsing with life. The walls moved, breathing, like the station wasn't built. It was grown. We split up. Me and Lena took the core. The others set charges in the access tunnels. We didn't talk much, just moved, fast and quiet. The core chamber looked like a heart. Giant tubes pulsing, screens flashing with symbols we'd never understand. Empire officers moving in strange, jittery ways, like insects wearing armor. We waited, watched, then struck. I shot the first one in the head. The second turned and screamed, one of those high-pitched screeches that made your stomach flip. Lena gunned it down before it finished. We moved fast, real fast, planted the device Ortiz gave us on the relay junction. Red light blinked, 30-second timer. Then we heard the shriek. Not from the officers, from something worse. The same kind of creature I saw at the hub. Another elite, twice as tall as me, armor humming, eyes like molten glass. It dropped from the ceiling. Lena screamed, fired. The thing vanished mid-air, cloaked, reappeared behind her. Too late. It drove its blade through her stomach, lifted her off the ground. I emptied my rifle into its back. It dropped her. She hit the floor hard, blood everywhere. I screamed, ran at it, pulled my knife. Didn't care. We fought like animals. It cut me deep across the face. I stabbed it in the leg. It grabbed my throat, slammed me into the wall. Pain shot down my spine, but I didn't stop. I reached down, pulled the detonator from Lena's belt. The elite roared, charged. I hit the button. Boom! The whole mountain shook. Fire swallowed the corridor. The last thing I saw was the creature burning. And Lena's hand reaching for mine. I woke up 3 days later in the ruins of the station. Buried in rubble. Half deaf. Covered in blood that wasn't all mine. Rhodes found me. Dragged me out with help from Nolan and Crowley. Lena didn't make it. Another stone, another tarp marker, another bullet casing. I didn't cry, just sat in the snow, holding what was left of her dog tags. And I whispered, "We're not done." Because the war wasn't over, and neither was my rage. Snow had stopped falling the day after we blew the relay station. Rhodes said it wasn't weather anymore. Not real, anyway. He said the sky was cracking, like the earth itself was reacting to the violence, to the blood soaking its soil. I didn't argue. I didn't care about the sky anymore. I only looked down now to see where to step, where to plant explosives, where to kneel and take a shot. The truth is, after Lena died, something in me didn't just break. It hollowed out. Her tags hung from my belt now, right next to my mom's necklace. I touched them before every operation like a ritual. Metal prayers in a war without gods. The Empire was pulling back from the region. Not because they were afraid. No, they didn't feel fear the way we did. But they were confused. They didn't know how to process what we were becoming. Their patterns, their logic, their strategies, they all failed because we had something they didn't understand. We wanted to die louder than they wanted to win. That's when the word came down from the mountains. The front was forming. Not just survivors. Not scattered resistance cells. An army. I didn't believe it at first. Thought it was just another campfire rumor, like the underground city in Alaska or the human-made kill drones reverse-engineered from Empire tech. But it was real. They called it Fort Spine, built into the cracked vertebrae of an old mining range, reinforced with ship debris and powered by hijacked Empire cores. When we arrived, it felt like stepping into a different world. Not hope. No, hate with structure. Hundreds of us, armed, focused, hungry. I saw kids training in trenches, saw old men loading mortars, saw mothers teaching field medicine to teenagers covered in scars. They didn't salute when we walked in. They just nodded. Recognition. Respect. Because by now, they'd all heard the story. The relay station. Lena's sacrifice. My knife in the elite's skull. Didn't matter if it was true or not. They needed legends now, and apparently, I'd become one. Rhodes introduced us to the one running it all, a man called Brannock. No title, no rank, just a black coat, a crushed eye, and a voice like rusted steel. He looked me over like a man inspecting a weapon, not a person. You led the mountain burn? I survived it. That's all that matters, he said. You'll lead again, this time off-world. That stopped me cold. Off-world? I asked. He nodded toward a holomap on the table behind him. Green dots flickered across it, dancing around red ones. We've hijacked a transport, Empire freighter, Class B armored hauler. They think it crashed. We're fixing it. Once it's up, we hit them where they sleep. Space? I muttered. No, Brannock said. They're farms. They're planets, the ones they took before us. The ones they broke and built into factories. We raid them. We burn them. We make Earth a lesson they'll never forget. I didn't ask how. I didn't ask if we were ready. I just asked, when do we leave? 3 days later, we launched. 33 of us. Light gear, close combat weapons, explosives, EMP rounds. The freighter was patched together with duct tape and stolen code. Rhodes flew it like it was a drunk animal. The engines roared louder than they should have, but they held. We broke atmosphere under the cover of debris from a failed orbital strike the Empire had launched a week ago. The wreckage gave us cover. Space wasn't clean anymore. It was a junkyard of destroyed hopes. None of us spoke much during the flight. We were heading to a world called Vireth 9, an agricultural colony the Empire used to breed hybrid soldiers. It was where they grew them, not raised, grew, in vats, in tanks. Some of them were half-human, made from the bodies they'd taken during the first wave. We landed hard, skidded through a blackened field of crystal wheat and slagged metal. It didn't look like a farm. It looked like a harvest ground for monsters. We moved fast, silent, spread out through the facility. No alarms went off. We used their codes, moved like shadows. And then I saw them. Tanks. Rows and rows of glass tanks. Inside, humanoid figures. Skin peeled back to show muscle fiber and twitching nerves. Artificial umbilical cords pumping glowing green fluid into their throats. Some were still forming. Others were just waiting. Eyes open. Dead eyes. Human eyes. I stared into one of them, and I swear, it looked like my brother. The jawline. The cheekbones. The scar across the lip. I almost dropped my rifle. That's when one of them moved, slammed a hand against the tank wall, lips forming silent words. Kill me. I didn't hesitate. One shot, straight through the glass. The fluid hissed out. The hybrid slumped over, twitching, choking on whatever life it wasn't meant to have. Rhodes shouted, "Blow the charges!" We wired the tanks, all of them, every single one. And when we hit the detonator, the fire that followed felt holy. The ground shook, the facility burned, screams filled the air, high-pitched, metallic, not human. But then, something happened. Something woke up. A siren went off. Not mechanical, biological, like a scream inside our bones. From beneath the facility they rose. The guards weren't soldiers, they were purebreeds, 10 feet tall, no faces. Just bone helmets fused into flesh, limbs like blades. One of them tore through Reed before he even turned around. Another grabbed a girl named Isa and ripped her in half mid-run. I emptied an entire magazine into one. It kept coming. Rhodes threw an anti-armor mine. The blast lit the night. It screamed, fell, twitched, then rose again. We weren't built to win this fight, but we didn't run. We couldn't, because this wasn't just a raid anymore. This was Earth's answer to every experiment, every stolen body, every broken promise. I pulled out my last incendiary charge. Rhodes looked at me. "You're not going to make it." "Doesn't matter." He grabbed my shoulder. "We make it together, or not at all." And somehow, we did. We crawled out of that burning crater, 3 of us left, lungs full of smoke and blood. The sky above Virith 9 burned green. We'd lit a fire that would never go out. The Empire's breeding grounds, gone. Their harvest vats, ruined. Their hybrids, screaming in the ashes. And us? We sent a message across the stars that day. We weren't victims. We weren't survivors. We were the vengeance of a dying world. Virith 9 burned for 7 days. The atmosphere turned acidic from the explosion. Empire breeding tanks melted like wax under fire. The soil turned black, and the rivers ran thick with green fluid. We didn't look back when we left. None of us said a word. There were only 3 of us left from the original 33. Me, Rhodes, and a woman named Kesh. She didn't speak much, not even after losing her whole fire team inside the vats. She just sat in the freighter, cleaning her blade like it was a religion. I respected it. I understood it. We didn't cry over the dead anymore. We carved their names into steel plates, bolted them to the inside of the ship, and kept flying. That was our version of mourning. When we re-entered Earth's orbit, we didn't expect a welcome. But what we saw? We weren't ready for it. The sky was on fire. The Empire had responded. Not with tactics, not with patrols, with extermination. Orbital cannons had turned cities to molten craters. Artificial meteors slammed into coastlines. Gas clouds poisoned the Midwest. Europe, gone dark. Africa, cut off. We didn't even know if Asia still had power. Rhodes pulled up live feeds from what little satellite coverage we had left. Bodies, everywhere. Civilians stacked like cordwood, forests burning, oceans boiling. The Empire wasn't just punishing us. They were sending a message. "You took one of our worlds. We'll take your entire species." We touched down near Fort Spine, or what was left of it, a crater. The mountains had collapsed in on themselves. The bunker was crushed. The walls melted. Smoke rose like funeral pyres into a sky that wasn't even blue anymore. It was the color of grief. But not everyone was dead. Pockets of resistance had retreated underground. We found survivors living in tunnels, blind, shaking, starving. One of them was my brother. I didn't recognize him at first. He was taller now, thinner. His eyes were darker than I remembered, not just in color, but in weight. Like he'd seen things that stripped the last pieces of childhood from him. He didn't hug me. He didn't cry. He just handed me a piece of cloth, part of a banner that used to hang in Fort Spine's hall. It had a single word burned into it: vengeance. That night, in a collapsed tunnel lit by flickering oil lamps, we had our first council. Rhodes, Kesh, myself, Brannick, who had survived by crawling under a wrecked troop transport and breathing through a torn hose, and my brother, now just called Cade. No one cared about rank anymore, only about resolve. We knew something now, something terrifying, something powerful. We could hurt them, but the cost was rising. We were losing not just lives, we were losing our humanity, and yet no one flinched. Cade said it first. We can't just survive anymore. We have to become something they fear. Rhodes nodded. We need monsters of our own. And that's when it started. The project. Ortiz had been working on it before he died, a way to weaponize captured Empire biotech, infuse it with human DNA. Not hybrids, carriers, human hosts bonded with neural mesh, given reflexes that moved faster than thought, strength that shattered bone, pain thresholds that meant nothing. Volunteers only. And the line? The line we weren't supposed to cross? We stepped over it and didn't look back. I was the first. They wired the tech into my spine, injected the serum into my blood. My muscles tore themselves apart and rebuilt in hours. My bones screamed, my skin peeled, my heartbeat turned into a war drum. I didn't sleep for 4 days. But when I stood again, I wasn't just human anymore. I was what they made me, and I felt everything, every scar, every loss, every scream I'd ever heard. It all lived inside me now, and I wanted to return it. We called ourselves the Red Breed. A dozen of us at first, modified, armored, remade from hate and Empire leftovers. Not pretty, not perfect, but effective. We didn't operate in squads anymore. We operated in waves. Rhodes found a surviving Empire outpost hidden under the remains of what used to be Vancouver. That was our proving ground. We didn't plan the attack. We didn't wait for the perfect moment. We came out of the snow and ripped it apart. Red Breed didn't shoot from cover. We ran straight into the fire. Bullets didn't stop us. Blades only made us faster. They screamed when they saw us. One of the officers tried to beg in broken English, held up a hand, said, "Mercy." I shoved a rebar spike through his mouth and whispered, "We lost that word." By the time the outpost burned, only one of us was dead. Their side, gone. We broadcast it again, not for morale, for fear. We hacked their relay channel. Sent every soldier, every commander, every ship captain one short video, a close-up of my face, scarred, unblinking, covered in soot and blood, and I said only one sentence. "You came to conquer us. Now we're coming to break you." That's when they finally reacted. Not with weapons, not with ships, but with a message, a real one, translated, precise, almost polite. "We recognize your species as a Class 6 threat. Your eradication is now prioritized above treaty enforcement and interstellar regulation. You will not be conquered. You will be cleansed." And that was the closest thing to fear we'd ever heard in their voice, because they weren't talking to civilians anymore. They were talking to us, the nightmares they created, and now couldn't control. That night, Cade sat next to me in the ruins of Fort Spine, staring out over the wasteland that used to be our home. He didn't say much, but before we slept, he asked me one question. "Do you ever think we've become the thing we were fighting?" I didn't lie. "Yeah. But the difference is, we chose to." And that choice, it made all the difference, because they started this war. But we were going to end it, even if it meant burning the stars. The first time I saw space from inside a real warship, it didn't look like stars. It looked like wounds, cuts in the black, scars across the void. The Empire's maps called this sector Vadran Span. We called it the Pathway to Vengeance. It connected 3 major colony worlds, supply hubs, cloning centers, and orbital weapon forges. Our new ship, stolen, gutted, rebuilt, had no name. We didn't need one. A name was for something you hoped would survive. We weren't planning on coming back. This wasn't a scouting mission. This was a strike. Me, Rhodes, Kesh, and 5 more Red Breed operatives. All of us reworked, enhanced, dead-eyed, and wired with pain inhibitors that let us move through bullets like rain. We didn't wear insignias. We didn't speak unless we had to. We didn't salute. We were not human anymore, not in the ways that mattered. And we were fine with that. The first world on our hit list was Gentha Prime. Empire designation, Resource Sector 8B. Human designation, The Graveyard. Because that's what they used it for. Not burial. Harvest, bones, teeth, muscle tissue. All pulled from expired subjects, meaning the people they couldn't fully convert into hybrids. I don't know how we found out. Probably Rhodes again, digging through their corrupted databanks back on Earth. Didn't matter how, all that mattered was we knew, and now we were going to erase it. We entered the system under cloak. Cade handled the re-entry. He was getting good with the flight systems, fast with Empire tech. Kid barely said 10 words on the trip out. But when we broke into Gentha's lower orbit, he whispered something I'll never forget. "They think we're here to fight." He paused, then looked me in the eyes. "We're here to ruin them." We dropped at night. Atmosphere hit hard. Yellow clouds, sulfur-rich air, no wind. The surface of Gentha wasn't soil. It was ground bone. Every step kicked up powdery ash. Skulls stared up from beneath the dirt. The facility was massive, dug deep into the planet's core, surrounded by electrified towers and glowing vents that hissed steam into the sky. Their perimeter sensors were advanced, but they hadn't accounted for what we'd become. Red Breed didn't trigger alarms. We were the alarm. Kesh took the east wall. Rhodes handled the supply bay. I went in through the incineration shaft, the one they used to discard failed harvests. The stench was unbearable. I pushed through it like it was just another memory. Inside the main chamber, the tanks were stacked in rows, not filled with bodies. Not this time. Just parts, eyes, arms, spines, guts in jars, all cataloged, all organized, all still twitching, still alive in some grotesque biological limbo. Nerve endings exposed, some blinking, some shivering. I didn't throw up. I didn't freeze. I just started planting charges. But I didn't set the timer. Not yet. Because I wanted them to see. We captured 2 officers during the breach. High rankers, bone-helmed. One of them had a voice module that let him speak in broken English. We didn't torture them. We didn't need to. We dragged them to the central chamber, chained them in front of the tanks, turned on the lights, let them see what their empire had become. I crouched next to the one who could speak and said, real quiet, "You call us savage." He didn't answer. I stood up, flipped the detonator in my hand. "You have no idea what savage looks like." I hit the switch. Fire swallowed the chamber. Flesh cooked. Glass exploded. Alarms blared across the planet. We left the officers alive. For a few seconds. Long enough for them to hear the screams of their own people inside the walls. Then Kesh put a spike through both their heads. We didn't run, we broadcast. Cade opened the ship's long-range comms and uploaded our footage to every active Empire channel within reach. It played on their command ships, on their colony stations, on their planetary feeds. We didn't just show the facility, we showed the faces, the remains, the parts, the flame. And then we ended the broadcast with a message burned into the screen with human blood. "You started this. We'll finish it." The Empire responded fast. 3 hours later, we were under assault. 3 destroyer-class warships dropped from hyperspace like thunder. They didn't ask questions, didn't send warnings. They glassed the surface of Gentha Prime, wiped out their own facility, their own people, trying to erase the evidence. We barely got out alive. Cade rerouted power to the secondary drives, and we blasted off the surface seconds before the entire region turned into molten rock. But the message had already gone out. And what followed? That's when the cracks began to show. Not in us, in them. We started picking up intercepted transmissions, Empire commanders arguing, some blaming each other for the loss, some questioning protocol. They weren't unified anymore, and why would they be? They'd spent 1,000 years stomping out small rebellions, mining planets, enforcing order with sterile precision. But this wasn't rebellion. This was contagion. The human rage was spreading across old colonies, abandoned fringe worlds, even within the slave species under Empire control. You could hear it in their voices, in the way they deployed ships, slower, hesitant, like they were starting to doubt their own dominance. The Red Breed had become something more than a weapon. We were a symbol. We weren't fighting to survive anymore. We were fighting to infect the galaxy with revenge. 2 weeks later, we hit another world. Not a facility this time. A council planet. Small, clean. Where their bureaucrats lived. Where they sent their diplomats and record keepers. The ones who sat in high towers and made laws while their machines did the killing. We burned it. Not because it was tactical, because it was theater. We crashed the ship through their main dome, walked through the streets while civilians screamed. Did we kill them all? No. We left a few, on purpose, so they could watch their peace turn to fire, so they could spread the story to the others. This wasn't war anymore. This was something older, blood for blood. And still, I felt it, eating away at me. Every night, after the missions, after the smoke cleared, I'd sit alone in whatever wreck we were hiding in, and I'd ask myself if there was anything left of the man who buried his mother's necklace in a jacket pocket. But every time I asked, I came up empty, because there's no coming back from what we'd become. And deep down, I didn't want to. Rhodes was the first to say it out loud. They're going to crack. We were sitting in an old Empire cargo freighter turned into a field base. Kesh was sharpening her blade, silent as ever. Cade stood by the viewport, staring out into a field of debris orbiting a dead moon. What do you mean? I asked. They can't hold it together. Not forever. They've never faced a species like us. We don't break, we rage. He paused. And that rage, it's spreading. And he was right. We started receiving signals from across the sector. Human prisoners revolting in mines, enslaved species turning on their handlers, Empire ships going dark, missing, ambushed. The Empire's so-called peace, the one they'd held for 1,000 years. It wasn't just breaking, it was shattering. And all because of us, because of Earth, because we didn't just fight back. We made war personal. We thought they'd fight harder, that after we burned Gentha Prime and torched their council planet, the Empire would unleash something biblical, maybe a world killer, maybe a second invasion wave. We braced for it. We loaded every railgun, rewired every mine, reinforced every stolen hull. But the fire never came. Instead, the Empire went quiet. Not silent, not gone, just fractured, like a machine seizing up mid-cycle. Their patrol routes became irregular, their fleets split up into smaller clusters, their transmissions fragmented, confused, commanders arguing in coded dialects that weren't even supposed to be heard by outsiders. We were watching a 1,000-year regime choke on its own blood. Cade said it best. They were never built for this kind of war. They're used to obedience, not rage. He wasn't wrong. We picked up intel that one of their internal planets, Virex 4, an old cloning and research hub, had gone dark. Not from us, from the inside. A worker revolt. Slave species had turned on the handlers, locked down the entire surface, and killed 3 Regent-class commanders. We didn't even lift a finger. This wasn't just our war anymore. It was becoming theirs, too. The ones they'd oppressed. The ones who'd watched us rise from ash and scream through the stars. They saw something in us the Empire never predicted. Permission. Permission to strike back. To burn what burned them. To finally bite the hand that had kept its boot on their throats for generations. And in their rage, they started to copy us. The first time we intercepted footage of an alien uprising, I watched it alone. Hacked into one of the Empire's remaining scout relays, Rhodes had managed to crack the encryption using part of the relay chip we tore from a field officer's brain. The footage was shaky. Grainy, but clear enough. A group of insectoid workers, species designation Geln, storming an administration center. One of them, spindly arms soaked in violet blood, stood over a dying commander. The creature held up a jagged shard of metal and drove it into the officer's eye again and again, screaming. Not words, just screaming. And on the wall behind them, painted in red, human red, was the word. Free. Not in their language, in ours. The red breed was no longer just a team. It had become a network. Dozens of us across space, modified, twisted, dangerous. Not all volunteered like we did. Some were broken and forced into it. Some took the implants too fast, too deep. They snapped, lost speech, lost empathy. One guy, called himself Mags, tore out his own jaw during a blackout episode and still survived. He leads a unit now, calls it the Silent Howl. They don't use weapons, just blades and the rage in their bones. They hit a bioforge on Ether Station 6. No survivors, no footage. Just screams on the black box logs and claw marks melted into the walls. Even I don't know if Mags is human anymore. And I don't care. He fights for Earth. That's enough. But not all the red breed remained loyal. Some took it too far. One of our outposts got hit. Not by Empire, by a rogue red breed squad called Echo Rain. Former soldiers who decided Earth's pain gave them the right to start taking planets for themselves. They stormed a neutral station, enslaved the locals, started calling themselves the New Dominion. Said they were claiming territory in Earth's name. Rhodes hunted them down personally. Took 2 weeks. When he came back, his eyes looked different. Harder. Like he'd seen something that made the Empire feel clean by comparison. He didn't talk about what he did. Just said, "We clean our own blood first." I asked how many survived. He didn't answer. But later that night, I found a box welded shut outside the mess hall. On it, scrawled in chalk, were the words, "No kings, no gods, no tyrants, even if they bleed red." Meanwhile, Earth, it wasn't the same planet we'd left behind. We landed near the old mountain range where Fort Spine once stood. The land had changed, trees dead, soil black. But humans were still there. Living in the underground, in abandoned tunnels, using melted ship debris as rooftops. Children ran barefoot through radioactive mud and laughed like they didn't know what the stars looked like. But they still fought, still trained, still whispered names like mine and Cade's like we were old myths or ghosts. That night, they held a gathering for us, not a ceremony. Just a fire in a crater and food cooked on broken exhaust vents. A woman approached me, scar across her jaw, steel rod in her leg. She carried a bundle wrapped in charred cloth. "My son," she said. I looked down. A boy, maybe 6. Wide-eyed, pale, missing his left arm. "I named him after your brother," she whispered. "Cade." I didn't know what to say. She placed a piece of metal in my hand. A small badge, twisted and half-melted, Empire insignia still visible. "I took it off the one who tried to kill him. Please, take it back up there. Let the rest of them know." Her eyes burned. They didn't win. We stayed on Earth for 3 days, long enough to rest, to rearm, to remind ourselves why we were still breathing. Then we left, back into the dark, because the war hadn't ended. Not even close. The Empire still had fleets, still had soldiers, still had planets locked in chains. But now, they also had doubt. And for the first time since this war began, we saw cracks in their voice. One transmission came through during re-entry. A message, not official, not from a council, from an Empire general, direct, unfiltered. We do not understand your species. You are illogical. You destroy what you might save. You corrupt those who follow you. You suffer loss and grow more dangerous, not less. You are not an enemy. You are a plague. There was a pause. Then it said, "You have already won, not because you are stronger, but because you are willing to burn with us." And that, more than anything, was the truth of humanity. We didn't just survive the fire. We became it. We didn't find their homeworld. It found us. The transmission didn't come through like the others. It wasn't encrypted, distorted, or filtered through a dozen hijacked relays. It came directly, clean, sharp, delivered across frequencies even roads hadn't touched before. And it used my name. To the one they call the Fire Tongue, "We are aware of your origin, your pain, your wrath." I didn't respond. I just listened. "We offer a corridor, one passage, to us. You seek the end, we will give it to you." Then it dropped coordinates. Floating text. No voice, just numbers and glyphs. Rhodes scanned it 6 times. No tricks, no traps. A clear route through a dead sector we hadn't even known existed. Cade looked at me across the room, said one word. "Homeworld." The room went quiet. Kesh leaned forward, arms crossed. "You think they want to surrender?" "No," I said. "They want to explain." Rhodes scoffed. "To who? The thousands they've gutted and turned into skin farms? The kids they liquefied in their breeding chambers?" I shook my head. "Not to us." "Then who?" "To themselves." Because I knew something now. The Empire wasn't just cracking. It was bleeding inside, like something behind all the glass and steel had started to rot, and now it needed to look in a mirror before the end came. We debated for 2 hours. Whether we go, whether we nuke the coordinates and keep grinding through their colonies. But deep down, we all knew. This was it. The end game. We took only one ship. Didn't bring a fleet, didn't need one. Just me, Rhodes, Cade, Kesh, and 3 red breed volunteers we trusted not to break when the sky turned black. They were already calling us ghosts now, on the outer systems, on the edge worlds. Survivors whispered our names like curses. Stories spread of men with melted eyes and steel bones who walked through fire without flinching. I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a man with one thing left to do. The corridor was real. A wormhole strung together by collapsing solar fields and gravitational echoes. Empire-made, ancient, elegant, a highway to hell with golden rails. As we traveled, the ship's AI kept warning us about heat signatures, instability, black matter spikes. We ignored it, because some places weren't meant to be safe. They were meant to hurt. 3 days through the corridor, and we reached it. Azareth Prime, not on any chart, hidden, guarded by cloak satellites and decoy signals, the Empire's home, their heart. And it was dying. You'd think a species that ruled the stars for a millennium would build their capital like a jewel. Gleaming towers. Pristine cities, art carved into light and stone. No, Azareth was cold, dark, brutal. Massive slabs of black metal stacked into pyramids, endless rows of angular buildings, no trees, no wind, no birds, just air recycled so many times it felt stale before you even breathed it. We landed on a platform wide enough to dock a dozen destroyers, No soldiers, no weapons pointed at us, just a lone figure waiting. Not armored, not holding a weapon, just standing. It looked old, not frail, not weak, just tired, a crown of bone wrapped around its skull. Its eyes glowed pale blue, but not from implants, from something deeper, something born, not built. Cade reached for his rifle. I stopped him. Not yet. The figure spoke without moving its mouth. The words came into our heads like thoughts we didn't ask for. You are what we feared. And what we created. Rhodes stepped forward. You're the one who ordered Earth's invasion. No, I am the one who argued against it. I was overruled. We were desperate. Kesh scoffed. Desperate? You butchered children. You harvested their bodies for weapons. The being nodded. And it bought us 10 more years of survival, 10 years we did not deserve. That's when I stepped forward, looked it in the eyes and asked, Why us? It didn't hesitate. Because your kind endures pain like no other. You survive beyond logic. You adapt through suffering. You are the apex of what we used to be. You feared us? No. We feared what we'd become. Weak. Predictable. Rotten. You reminded us of the thing we once were. And that scared the Empire more than any weapon. For a second, I saw it. Not arrogance. Not power. Shame. They didn't attack us because we were dangerous. They attacked because we were a mirror, and they couldn't stand the reflection. They took us into the city. No guards, no tricks, just wide streets lined with statues, not of warriors, but scientists, thinkers, creators, people who had imagined a future without war before the Empire rotted itself from the inside. Every building was a mausoleum now, empty, silent, filled with screens playing historical loops. They showed us their rise, their golden age, their peace. Then they showed us the first rebellion, not human, one of their own species, crushed in silence, then the second, then the third. By the fifth, they'd stopped counting and started harvesting. You are not our first rebellion, the figure said, but you are the last. Because we will not survive this. He led us to the core chamber. It wasn't military. It was biological, a living thing, huge, pulsing, suspended in green fluid, veins stretched across the ceiling, the walls, the floor. This is what has kept us alive, our central consciousness, our hive. Though we abandoned the name long ago, it makes decisions, it calculates strategy, it suppresses dissent, but it cannot suppress you. Cade raised his rifle. What happens if we kill it? You end us. I looked at Rhodes. He didn't blink. Then we end you. We placed the charges, all around the chamber. As we moved, the figure didn't fight, didn't beg, just watched. I do not fear death, it said, but I fear what comes next. You are not ready for what power brings. We don't want power, I said. We want closure. Then take it. And know that what you leave behind will outlast us. Your rage, your pain, your species, let it not become a mirror of ours. I didn't promise him anything, because we were already too far gone. Cade hit the detonator, and Azareth Prime began to die. The shockwaves cracked the sky. Buildings fell like bones. The core screamed, not in sound, but in thought. A billion voices shattered at once. We ran, fought our way through crumbling cathedrals and collapsing bridges. By the time we reached the ship, the planet was tearing itself apart. As we broke orbit, I looked down, watched their homeworld crack in half like a rotten egg. The Empire, the one that ruled for 1,000 years, was dead. And Earth? We were still standing. We didn't celebrate. We didn't cheer. We flew back into silence. Because winning doesn't feel like anything when you've lost everything along the way. Back on Earth, the skies were still gray. Kids still slept in ruins. Survivors still huddled near barrel fires and whispered stories of the fire-tongued man, the steel-blooded boy, the knife girl with no fear. They asked if the war was over, and I told them the truth. No, but they are. Because peace doesn't come after war like a sunrise. It comes like a funeral. Quiet, slow, and cold. We returned to silence, not peace, not relief. Just silence. When the Empire fell, there was no grand announcement, no trumpet through the void. Just a dead sky where their ships used to be and a silence so loud it made your teeth hurt. Back on Earth, no one knew what to do. Some thought it was a trick, that they'd return. Others kept fighting shadows in the woods, shooting at drones that weren't there. The rest? They just sat, staring at burned-out buildings and listening to radios that had nothing left to say. The Red Breed didn't disband. We just stopped moving. After Azareth Prime broke apart, we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about anything. I'd stare out the window of the broken freighter and think about how quiet space had become. No patrols, no scanners, no transmissions bleeding through the static. We had silenced a 1,000-year machine. And now? Now we were alone with ourselves. I walked through the bones of Fort Spine that first night back. The crater was still there, full of ash, rust, and bits of melted metal that used to be weapons. A boy followed me. Couldn't have been older than 10. He didn't say anything, just stayed close, watching my boots crush the debris. I finally turned to him. "You lose someone here?" He nodded. "Who?" He shrugged. "Everyone." That hit harder than any round I ever took. I crouched, pulled the old necklace from my coat, the one I'd been carrying since the day my mom disappeared. The chain was rusted. The charm was cracked, but it still caught the light just enough to look like hope. I held it out. The kid stared at it like I was handing him something dangerous. "What's it do?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "But it's been through hell, and it's still here." He took it with both hands, cradled it like it was something holy, and walked away without saying a word. I stood there for a long time after that, long enough to realize I had nothing left to hold. Rhodes tried to rebuild command, not a government. No one wanted that, just structure. Order. A way to stop the wrong people from filling the void we'd carved into the galaxy. Because the truth was, the Empire wasn't the only thing that died. The balance died with it. The outer systems, the fringe worlds we never even touched, started tearing themselves apart. Old syndicates, hidden warlords, pirate clans, they came crawling out of the cracks. Some of them claimed they were the new authority. Some claimed they were liberators. Most were just opportunistic bastards with guns and no leash. We got word that one of the Red Breed units, Echo Rain, had resurfaced. Again. They weren't wearing our symbol anymore. They weren't fighting for Earth. They were taking colonies, forcing allegiance, calling themselves the true lineage. They said the only way to avoid another empire was to become one. Rhodes asked me to hunt them down. I said no, not because I couldn't, because I didn't know who I was fighting anymore. Them? Or myself? Cade didn't come back with us. After the final strike on Azareth Prime, he stayed behind in orbit with a small cell of volunteers, said he needed space, said he didn't know how to live on Earth anymore. He was right. We weren't built to live anymore. We were built to burn. I checked transmissions from his ship every few days. No messages, no status updates. Just one file sitting in the encrypted log. A voice recording. His voice. I finally opened it. "If you're hearing this, I guess you're still alive. That's something, right? I've been thinking about what we did, all of it. I can't figure out if we saved the species or just gave it a longer noose. But I know this. If we let what they made of us define what comes next, then they still win. Don't let them win." That was the end of it. No goodbye, no closure, just another ghost in my head. Kesh disappeared too. No announcement, no tracker. One day she was there, sitting by the wreckage of a downed Empire crawler, sharpening her blade. And the next, gone. No one even saw her leave. But I don't blame her. She carried more bodies inside her than any graveyard could hold. And some people just don't want to be remembered. So that left me. The last one. The fire-tongued freak who had led men into hell and walked back out with a heart full of glass. People started calling me General. I hated it, because generals had plans. All I had was the next breath. I spent my days wandering through the ruins of old bases, talking to survivors, helping rebuild filtration units or fix busted hydro lines. The war wasn't over in their eyes. They were still fighting, just to drink clean water or keep a roof above their heads. And that's when I saw it. Change, not in me, in them. People planting again, kids learning again, music coming back, rough, ugly, loud, but real. Humanity wasn't healing. It was adapting. Same way it always had. Not like it used to be, not shining cities or polished flags, but tougher, smarter, meaner, like scars that never fade but don't bleed anymore. I remember the first time I heard laughter again. Real laughter. Two kids wrestling near a crater full of burnt tires, shouting nonsense and throwing old food wrappers like confetti. I just stood there, watching. Felt something in my chest I hadn't felt in years. And I didn't even know what to do with it. There was talk of building a new central hub. Not a capital, just a meeting ground. A place for leaders, if that's what we had now, to talk. I didn't go. I stayed in the south ruins, where the air still smelled like melted steel and everything was too quiet. One day, a girl came up to me. Teenager, face full of soot, arms strong from hauling scrap. "You the fire guy?" she asked. "Used to be." She nodded, like that was enough. Then she said, "You gonna lead the next war?" I looked her in the eye. "No," I said. "You are." She laughed, didn't believe me. But I wasn't joking. Because I didn't want a next war. I didn't want statues or stories or songs. I just wanted one more season where the sky stayed blue, and no one fell asleep wondering if they'd wake up to fire. I never rebuilt my weapon, didn't clean my armor, didn't shave the scars. I left them all like that, reminders, not of what I did, but of what I refused to do again. Some nights I still hear the old alarms in my dreams, feel the hum of dropships through my bones, smell the rot of broken cloning tanks. But when I wake up, there's a breeze, a real one, and somewhere nearby someone's cooking food that doesn't come from a ration tube. And that's enough. For now. It didn't take long before the fire came back. Not from the Empire. From us. 3 months after Azareth Prime fell, Earth had its first civil strike. Not a battle, not a skirmish, just a message. A big one. Painted across the side of an old bunker with black tar and blood. The weak forgive, the strong continue. I didn't hear about it until Rhodes contacted me. His voice came through the static one cold morning, while I was rebuilding a solar collector in the ruins of New Chicago. "Echo Rain's back," he said. "Worse, smarter. I thought we ended them, burned out their core cell, cut off their supplies. I thought Rhodes buried their leader himself, a bastard named Lorne who wore a human skin mask and believed Earth's pain was a divine right. Apparently, I was wrong. They're calling themselves the Sovereign Line now," Rhodes said. "And they're not just talking, they're recruiting." "From who?" "From us, the fighters, the veterans, the ones who lost too much and didn't get enough back." That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Because I knew those men. I'd fought beside them. Hell, some of them owed their lives to me. And now they were joining a faction that believed the only future Earth deserved was one ruled by fire and domination. I didn't want to leave the South Ruins, didn't want to put on armor again. Didn't want to clean blood from my fingers, but I also knew one truth, and it burned like poison in my gut. If we don't fight the monsters we made, no one else will. So I strapped my gear back on, dug my old rifle from the dirt, welded the broken scope back into place, pulled my coat tight, and headed north, where the first Sovereign Line outpost was rumored to be growing, near the wreckage of the old orbital station. On the second day, I found a child, maybe 8, with a cracked helmet and a burn across his left eye. He was sitting on a metal slab, holding a piece of charred bread like it was gold. I asked him who gave it to him. He pointed toward a hill. "You'll find the ones with flags there," he said. "They say the world's still broken, and that you're the reason it can't heal." That night, I reached the ridge. He was right. Dozens of them, in old gear, some wearing torn red breed armor, others wrapped in Empire plating, pieced together like scavengers. Their banner wasn't fancy, just a black cloth, with a red stripe through the middle, vertical, like a blade. I watched from the trees, listened. A man stood in the center of the camp, tall, with a voice that carried like a preacher's, not yelling, calm, measured, every word hit like a nail. "We were made in fire," he said. "We fought gods and broke them, and now what do they ask of us? Peace? Forgiveness? To share food with the same people who hid in basements while we bled on the stars?" The crowd didn't cheer. They nodded. Slow, like every word had weight. "We are the rightful heirs of Earth's pain, and we will not trade our rage for silence." I stepped out of the trees and walked into the camp. No helmet, no mask, just me. Their rifles rose fast, but so did their hesitation, because they knew who I was. Some had bled beside me on Vireth 9. Others had trained under me in the mountains during the Black Winter. A few had watched me break open the gates of the breeding chambers with nothing but a blade and a scream. Their leader turned. And I knew him instantly, not Lorne. Morrow. He used to run recon during the first Resistance years. Had a scar across his mouth from an Empire trap mine. I'd pulled him from a collapsing tunnel once. Thought he was dead. Apparently not. He smiled at me like we were still friends. "Didn't think you'd come down from your hill," he said. "You finally hear us or just came to shut us up?" "I came," I said, "to stop the next war before it starts." He chuckled. "You think this is about war?" "You still think in those terms. That's your problem. War ends. Power doesn't." I looked at the men behind him. Hard eyes, twitchy hands, fresh scars. "You're building something. An army. For what?" "For the next threat," Morrow said. "Because it's coming, and when it does, the soft will fall and the wolves will rise." "And who decides who's soft?" He didn't answer, because he knew the answer already. He would. They let me leave, only because they wanted to. I didn't push. I didn't start a fight. Not yet. But I walked back into the wasteland that night with something heavier than guilt in my chest. A truth. We had become the gods we killed. And now? We didn't know how to stop becoming them. Rhodes met me halfway between sectors. He'd set up shop in an old comms tower, still crackling with half-dead tech and the smell of copper wiring. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad," I said, "and getting worse." He showed me a map. Pins, movement, 3 more outposts, all Sovereign Line, all gathering speed. "They're not just talking," he said. "They're drafting, rewriting laws, claiming regions. Some settlements are bending the knee just to avoid another civil war." I leaned against the wall, staring at nothing. "They're using our pain like a flag," I muttered, "turning it into a crown." Rhodes looked at me long. "Maybe we gave them the blueprint." We had two choices. Let it grow, or cut it out. I didn't like either. But I also knew what happened when you let a wound fester. So we picked 20 loyal red breed. Quiet, fast, remorseless, and we struck the second largest outpost at night, not to kill, to send a message. We tore down their flags. Broadcasted Morrow's speech across open channels, edited to show his ambition, his threats, his plan to seize Earth by force. We didn't lie. We just held up the mirror. Half his men fled. The other half died in the fire. Morrow wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He was smarter than that. But now? He knew we were coming. And we knew what came next wouldn't be diplomacy. It would be war without the excuse of aliens. Afterward, Rhodes said something I haven't forgotten. We won the biggest war humanity's ever seen. And still, we weren't ready for peace. He was right. Because peace isn't the absence of war. It's the absence of purpose. And for too many of us, purpose only came when we had something to kill. That night, I sat alone in the crater of Fort Spine. The stars above were finally clear. No warships, no orbital burns, just sky. Real sky. And I realized something awful. We knew how to survive the apocalypse. We just didn't know what to do after it. We didn't call it a war, not out loud, not yet. But that's what it was, and not one we could afford. Not after what we'd lost to the Empire. Not after the ground still smoked in places where cities used to be. Not after the oceans had yet to rise back to their original shorelines. We were still rebuilding. But the Sovereign Line? They were already replacing. They took Sector 11 without firing a shot. No firebombs, no shootouts, just words. Broadcast across the broken grid using one of our own comm towers. A speech from Morrow. Clean, sharp, rehearsed. We defended Earth when no one else would. We endured hell so you could eat and sleep and smile again. And now they tell us to hand the future to politicians? To rebuild the old world that failed us? We say no. We say the strong shall lead. We say Earth is ours now, and we will not ask permission to carry its flag. The message ended with a symbol, a clenched black fist with the red vertical stripe, the Sovereign Line's banner. I watched it alone from Rhodes' command station, teeth grinding so hard I thought I'd break them. Cade appeared in the doorway before I could punch the screen in. He'd come back 2 nights ago, thin, quiet, but colder than before. The fire in his eyes didn't flicker anymore. It just burned steady. They're building something permanent, he said. Yeah, I muttered. A future made of ashes. We sent out feelers, not soldiers, talkers. Old resistance fighters who still had enough goodwill left in them to walk into a Sovereign Line outpost and ask questions without getting shot. Some came back, most didn't. The ones who did, they told us things we didn't want to hear. Morrow had schools now, teaching children that weakness was treason, that forgiveness was decay, that pain was legacy, and legacy was rule. They were training a new generation of soldiers who didn't flinch when they killed. Not because they were cruel, because they were taught it was necessary. The Council of Free Zones, what passed for Earth's last attempt at a neutral government, asked me to speak, not as a leader. I didn't have a title anymore, but as a symbol. The fire-tongued, the blade of Virith, the one who cracked Azareth Prime in half and came back breathing. I didn't want to. I didn't want podiums and lights and quiet nodding from people who hadn't held a bleeding comrade in their lap while orbital fire rained down. But I went. Because Morrow was speaking too. The conference hall was carved out of an old subway station. The ceiling still had burn marks from the last air raid. Rows of scavenged chairs filled the room. Faces from across Earth's ruins gathered in one place for the first time in years. Morrow stood on the far side of the stage, dressed in all black, No weapons, just presence. I stepped up, wearing the same coat I'd worn since the invasion. Holes in the sleeves, bloodstains that never washed out. I didn't want to be polished. I wanted them to remember. The silence stretched. Then I spoke. Not loud, just enough. We were forged in fire. You all know that. Some of you bled beside me. Some of you lost more than I ever will. But now that the war's over, we have to ask something harder than, how did we survive? We have to ask, what do we become? Morrow would have you believe pain gives you the right to rule. That survival makes you more worthy. That if you didn't fight, you don't get to speak. But let me tell you something. I didn't fight so we could crown warlords. I didn't bury my friends just to let someone else decide who's human enough to live free. We're not gods. We're not kings. We're not anything more than men who refused to kneel. And if we build a world on domination, we haven't won. We've just become the next empire. Silence. Then Morrow took the mic and tore it all down. He didn't shout, didn't need to. I respect my brother, he said, nodding toward me. He fought, he bled. And he speaks for the broken. But broken men don't build futures. We do. We took the fire and made it into a torch, not for destruction, for guidance. And now we light the way for those who still live in the dark. The Empire is dead, but Earth isn't safe, not yet. Because weakness didn't die with them, it survived. And it's crawling back through kindness, through compromise, through talks like these. He looked straight at me. I don't want to be a god, but if this world needs one to survive, I'll become it. The crowd was split. Some applauded, some turned away. A few looked down like they weren't sure who they feared more, the man with the fire in his voice, or the man with nothing left in his eyes. We left without a decision, because you can't vote your way out of a moral collapse. What we had now wasn't a disagreement. It was a civil fracture. Rhodes said it out loud once we regrouped back at our hideout. We've got a month before they start taking zones by force, maybe less. Cade asked what the plan was. Rhodes looked at me. I didn't have one. Because part of me, the part no one saw, understood Morrow too well. He wasn't wrong about the weakness crawling back. He wasn't wrong about the danger of the old world slipping in through the cracks. He was just wrong about the answer. 2 nights later, our intel confirmed it. The Sovereign Line had moved into Free Zone 7, a coastal refugee settlement we'd helped set up 2 years ago. Mostly civilians. No formal defense. They didn't come in with weapons. They came in with promises, better rations, protection, power, structure. Then, they installed curfews, kicked out former resistance members. Set up checkpoints. Anyone who questioned them disappeared. I suited up. Cade did too. Rhodes didn't argue. No more diplomacy. Time to put down the rebellion before it became the new regime. We hit them before dawn. Just me, Cade, Rhodes, and 7 loyal red breed. We came in through the seawall tunnels, old Empire entry points we'd kept hidden during the invasion. They'd forgotten them. We didn't. No speeches, no warnings, just cold metal, fast breath, and the kind of silence only killers understand. By the time the sun broke over the water, 30 Sovereign Guards were dead. We didn't touch the civilians, didn't damage the food stocks. We just left one message carved into the gates with a fusion torch. Earth belongs to all of us, not just the angry. Of course, Morrow responded. His voice rang across all sectors within hours. This was an act of cowardice, of terrorism, led by a man who once stood for vengeance and now hides behind pacifist delusions. I will no longer wait. The fire-tongued has declared war, and I will answer it, not with speeches, with conquest. So here we are. The war after the war. The final fight. Not for survival, for the soul of what comes next. I sit now in the ruins of our last field base, watching as survivors come in with packs and weapons, asking what flag we fight under. I don't give them a flag. I give them the truth. We fight so no one else ever gets to wear a crown made of someone else's suffering. And if that means war again, so be it. This time we're not fighting aliens. We're fighting the version of us that forgot why we ever picked up the rifle to begin with. And I swear to every ghost I carry, we will not become what we bled to destroy, even if it kills us. We stopped calling it the last war. We weren't that naive. But we knew this was the one that mattered. Because it was the only one where we weren't fighting something foreign. Not aliens, not machines, not Empire drones with synthetic blood. This time we were fighting us. And that made it worse. Because we knew how to kill the enemy. We didn't know how to kill a reflection. Morrow moved fast after Zone 7. He'd waited long enough. Built enough. Trained enough. And once we embarrassed him, once we cut through his men and left that message on the gate, he couldn't hold back. To him, it wasn't just retaliation. It was announcement. The Sovereign line hit Zone 5 first. Hit it hard. No more politics. No more sweet talk. They rolled through the streets in patched-up vehicles, blasting loudspeakers with their doctrine. The strong rule, the broken follow, the rest burn. By the time we got there, it was over. Bodies stacked in the market square. Anyone who resisted was lined up, shot in the spine, dumped in the sewer trenches. They hung an old red-breed soldier from the comm tower. One of mine. A man named Roke. Quiet. Solid. Used to carry a photo of his wife even after the Empire's plasma strikes took out the eastern cities. They cut his throat and wrote "traitor" across his chest in black grease. Rhodes pulled him down. Didn't say a word. He didn't need to. We all knew what came next. This wasn't about speeches anymore. This wasn't about morale. It was about momentum. We had to stop them before the fire spread. Or Earth wouldn't just fracture again. It would split beyond saving. We gathered everything we had. What was left of the red breed. Militia units from the western free ranges. Civilians who remembered what we'd fought for and saw how quickly it was being stolen. No medals, no banners, just scarred hands gripping cold weapons and eyes too tired to blink. I gave one last briefing. Didn't even raise my voice. They'll be dug in at Zone 3. Trenches, fortified checkpoints, converted turrets. It's a kill zone. We go anyway. Because if we don't, the next child born on this planet grows up calling Morrow's name like it's law. And I didn't bleed across galaxies just to see another tyrant rise. They didn't cheer. They just nodded. That's how you know you've got soldiers. When they don't need to be convinced. We launched at dawn. Zone 3 was built on the ruins of an old Empire supply outpost. Reinforced, angular, cold. A natural fortress. Perfect for a man who preached power. They saw us coming. Morrow's men weren't sloppy. They were trained. Some had once stood beside us in the fires of Azareth Prime. And now? Now they were manning guns that fired on their own people. Rhodes led the west flank. Cade took the tunnels beneath. I charged through the center with the red breed, roaring through smoke and plasma like it was the first days of the invasion again. The air was thick with blood and dust. No commands, no orders, just instinct. I caught a Sovereign soldier trying to flank us. A kid, maybe 17, too clean, too fresh. He raised his rifle. I knocked it aside, pinned him to the wall. His eyes were wide, terrified, mouth shaking. "I didn't want to," he whispered. "They said you'd kill us if we didn't fight." I hesitated. That moment of weakness nearly killed me. Someone behind him fired, hit me in the shoulder, spun me into the dirt. The kid ran, didn't look back. Rhodes dragged me behind cover. "You all right?" "Just the arm," I said, teeth clenched. "Stop hesitating." He wasn't wrong, but I kept seeing that kid's face, not fear of me, fear of everything. The battle dragged into night. Zone 3 was a maze. Every turn bled. Cade cleared the tunnel flank, took out their comm tower with an EMP core we thought was long dead. Kesh returned from wherever the hell she vanished to, led a charge through their eastern gate with a squad of scavengers who called themselves Ash Tongue. By midnight, the walls cracked. By 2 a.m., the sovereign forces began to scatter. But Morrow? He stayed. I found him near the old Empire fuel chamber, pacing like he still believed he had time. He didn't wear armor, just black cloth, soaked with ash and sweat. He turned when he saw me. Didn't reach for a weapon, just said, "So this is where it ends." "It should have ended in the council chamber," I said. He laughed, dry, hollow. "You never understood. You thought we fought for survival, for freedom. But we fought for meaning, for purpose, for a world where our pain wasn't wasted." "And you think ruling people gives it purpose?" "No," he said, "but making them strong does." I raised my weapon. He didn't move. "Do it," he said. "But you already lost." "How?" "Because when I fall, you'll still have to choose. Who leads next? Who builds the future? Who decides what comes after rage?" I stared at him a long time. Then I lowered the gun. "You don't get martyrdom," I said. "You get memory. That's worse." Cade entered behind me. No words, just a nod. And a syringe, sedation. We took Morrow alive. Because execution makes heroes, and we were done making those. We cleared Zone 3 by morning, released the prisoners, destroyed the propaganda terminals, burned the Sovereign line banners. Then we did something none of us expected. We stayed, set up shelter, brought in medics, dug gardens, because we weren't just soldiers anymore. We were the ones who stayed after the fire. And that was harder than any war. 2 weeks later, Rhodes came to me with a data pad. "Council wants to talk," he said. "About what comes next?" I shook my head. "No more councils, no more thrones. You don't have to lead. But you have to show your face." I looked out at the people, patching roofs, planting soil, fixing pipes, smiling for the first time in years. And I realized something. I didn't need to lead anymore, because they didn't need me anymore. And that was the greatest victory of all. The gun stopped firing weeks ago. The sky stayed quiet. No dropships, no orbital sirens, no armored boot prints in the dirt, just wind. Wind and silence. And I didn't know what to do with either. Zone 3 was still rebuilding. The blood had dried, but the stink of it hung in the cracks. The walls were patched, the checkpoints dismantled, the Sovereign banners used as fuel for the campfires. We didn't raise new flags. We didn't need another symbol. We needed space. A woman named Camlin oversaw most of the reconstruction, former medtech during the Empire raids. Smart, ruthless when she needed to be. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it felt earned. She told me they were turning the old armory into a clinic. "The war's over," she said. "We fix people now." I nodded. Didn't tell her I wasn't sure we could be fixed. Rhodes disappeared again. He'd always been that way. Never stayed put when the noise died down. Said it made him feel like a caged beast. "Peace is a cage," he once told me. "Not for the weak, for the strong. It keeps them from becoming what they're best at." I didn't ask where he was going this time. He just handed me a bottle of fire-aged whiskey from a forgotten Empire vault and said, "Don't drink it all unless it's over." Then he walked into the ash and was gone again. Morrow was kept underground, not tortured, not starved. We weren't him. He had a cot, food, even books. One of the guards gave him a journal, said he started writing in it daily. I visited once, just to look. He stared at me through the bars. Calm, quiet, no threats, no madness, just a man who believed too hard in something that wasn't real anymore. I asked him what he wrote about. He said, "Regret." I didn't know if I believed him, so I left. Cade spent his days with the engineers, not rebuilding weapons, rebuilding power, the grid, the communications net, the weather stabilizers. He didn't say much anymore. But when he worked, his hands didn't shake. And when the lights flickered on in the South Housing Block for the first time in 6 years, he smiled. Not a big smile, just enough. And that was more than I'd seen from him in a long time. Me? I walked. I walked through streets that used to burn, now covered in chalk drawings from kids who didn't remember the Empire. I watched people farm where there used to be bunkers, heard laughter echo in places that had once only known gunfire. And still, I couldn't feel full. Like something inside me had been hollowed out during the war and now refused to grow back. I didn't dream. Not like normal people. My dreams came like static, flashes of white noise and memory, of flesh burning and machines screaming and the feeling of a blade going too deep. Some nights I'd wake up with my fist clenched so tight I'd cracked my own knuckles. I didn't tell anyone. They needed me to be okay. The new council invited me to the Hill. That's what they were calling the neutral seat, just a series of reinforced steel domes in the old Colorado highlands. They wanted guidance. They wanted me to speak. I told them no, I wasn't done bleeding yet, and I sure as hell didn't trust myself to lead when I still had that fire in my chest, the one that never went out. Camlin brought me a girl one afternoon, 10 years old, half burned across the face. Didn't talk. They found her in one of the Sovereign holding cells, barely breathing, skin fused to her left side. Camlin patched her up best she could. But the girl didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't even blink unless you made noise. "She won't go near anyone," Camlin said, "but she keeps asking for you." I didn't understand. But I went. The girl sat in a corner of the medic tent, wrapped in old cloth, holding a metal bolt in her palm like it was a relic. I sat across from her, said nothing. She didn't look up, just held out the bolt. I took it. It was from an old red breed gauntlet. Bent. Blood-stained. Mine. I remembered losing it during the Gentha Prime raid, when we tore apart the vats and burned the breeding tanks. I remembered the sound the facility made when it screamed, the smell of cooked nerve and scorched alloy. And I remembered seeing her, small, trapped behind a half-formed shell of tech flesh, crying without sound. I'd pulled her out myself, didn't think she survived. Now here she was, alive, watching me with wide, hollow eyes. I placed the bolt on the ground between us, said nothing. She reached forward, took it, then, slow, crawled into my lap and fell asleep. I sat there until the next morning. Didn't move once. People started calling her Ember. She never spoke. But she stayed near me. Every step. Didn't cry, didn't complain. Just watched. Like she wanted to make sure I didn't disappear. Sometimes I think she saw more clearly than I did. She saw that I wasn't really here. Not all of me. Just the shell. Just the bones that hadn't fallen apart yet. But she still stayed. And slowly, that hollow space inside me, it stopped echoing so loud. 3 months passed. Then the Hill called again. This time I said yes. I brought Ember with me. Cade joined. Camlin too. Even Rhodes, out of nowhere like he'd been waiting in the shadows for something to matter again. They didn't ask me to rule, just to speak. So I did. I stood before what passed for the new voice of Earth, scavengers and scientists and survivors dressed in mismatched clothes, sitting around a dented table that had once been an Empire tactical board. And I said, We burned the sky. We broke gods. We killed the future that was handed to us because it wasn't worth living in. But now we've got a chance, one chance, to build something that doesn't bleed by default. And if we screw that up, we deserve to fall. No more thrones, no more empires, no more strongmen who rise from the corpses of the weak. From now on, we fight for the quiet, for the fields, for the ones who won't ever carry a rifle. No applause, just quiet. Then nods. Slow, certain. Afterward, one of the younger council members asked me if I thought peace would last. I looked at Ember. Then out the window, where the sky was finally starting to remember what blue looked like, and I said, "If it doesn't, I'll burn again. But not before I try to grow something first." I should have known it wouldn't stay quiet. 3 months into the rebuild, and it almost felt like Earth was healing. Tents were replaced with walls. Farms sprouted where mass graves used to be. Roads were rebuilt. Communications relays were stable again. Even the western zones, once drowned in smoke and ash, were breathing clean air. People laughed. People loved. For the first time in years, children were born without being assigned a faction at birth. I was still walking the south, mostly with Ember. She didn't speak, not with words, but she'd started humming, soft sounds, like little sparks of light under her breath. Some nights, when the winds were calm and no distant thunder of machinery echoed through the canyons, I could almost forget. Almost. But scars don't heal. They just stop bleeding. And in the deepest part of me, I knew something wasn't done yet. Not with me, not with Earth. It started with a ghost transmission. We caught it by accident. An old orbital scanner, long deactivated, suddenly blinked green. Rhodes was the one who found it. Said he'd been checking dormant satellites just to see what he could bring online again. He pulled me into the bunker and played it back. A signal. Garbled, repeating. Looped 3 words. Fleet, returning, failed. It wasn't one of ours. It wasn't sovereign line. And it wasn't friendly. Cade traced the signal's origin to deep orbit. A debris field, one of the Empire's early graveyards. We'd never cleared it. We thought the fire had consumed everything up there. We were wrong. Rhodes looked at me across the room. "You know what this means?" I nodded. The Empire wasn't just on Azareth Prime. They sent something else. Or someone. We stared at the blinking signal for a long time. And then I said what none of us wanted to say. We didn't kill it all. We took a small team. Just me, Rhodes, Cade, and 3 others we trusted. Ash Tongue survivors, Red Breed remnants. Camlin stayed behind to manage the zones. Ember watched us go. She stood on the landing platform in a too big coat, arms folded, staring like she was trying to memorize my face before it disappeared. I promised I'd be back. She didn't believe me. Can't blame her. I wasn't sure I believed me either. We reached the debris field in 2 days. It was worse than expected. Wreckage from every faction, human and alien, twisted together like a metal graveyard spinning in silence. And buried inside it, a signal core. Still active. We docked to it manually, Rhodes feeding override codes from a hacked transmitter we'd pulled off a downed Empire scout years ago. The hatch opened with a hiss. And inside? They were waiting. Not soldiers. Preservers. Empire design. Biocybernetic. Not sentient, not truly. Just coded with one directive. Preserve the bloodline. Await resurrection. They attacked instantly. No hesitation. No tactics. Just raw, hive-born aggression. The first one split Rhodes's shoulder open before he even got his rifle raised. Cade threw a plasma charge, lit up the corridor like it was day again. The smell hit next. Hot meat and oil and something chemical underneath, like embalming fluid. We moved fast, swept room by room. It wasn't a ship. It was a vault. Hundreds of pods. Some empty. some cracked, some alive, twitching things. Half-formed, not quite human, not quite empire, experiments, last-ditch efforts, insurance. I found one labeled Designate Throne Child. Inside, a body that looked human, too human, a girl, maybe 10. Pale, eyes open, but the pupils weren't right, not round, not focused, just glowing. And when her lips moved, they formed my name. We burned it all, no debate. Cade rigged the core with overcharged reactors. We escaped on emergency thrusters, watched the vault break apart like bone under fire. Rhodes didn't say a word the whole trip home, just clutched his bleeding shoulder and stared at the floor. I kept thinking of that phrase in the signal. Fleet, returning. Failed. Failed. As in, something tried to bring them back, tried and lost. But if there was a fleet, it meant more than just this vault. It meant someone, somewhere. Still wanted the Empire alive. And worse, they had the tech to try. When we landed, I didn't go to the council. I went straight to Ember. She was waiting, didn't say a word, just handed me a piece of charcoal and pointed at the wall of the supply depot where she'd been drawing. I looked, and there, etched in long, jagged lines, was a ship. Not human. Not from any fleet we'd used. Empire, 3 engines, slanted hull, burning sky beneath it. I looked down at her. She just nodded. We weren't done. And peace? Peace was still just a rumor. I called a meeting. Not the council, not the politicians, just the ones who'd bled for it all. Rhodes, Cade, Camlin, Kesh, who'd returned again with fresh scars and no explanation. I laid it out. Everything. What we found, what was waiting in orbit, what Ember drew before we ever left. Cade leaned forward, cracked his knuckles and said, "So it's not over." Rhodes answered for me. "It never is." Camlin didn't blink. "Then we do what we always do," she said. "Fight?" Kesh asked. Camlin shook her head. "End it properly this time." We started scanning beyond local orbit, reaching out with probes, signal sweeps, radiation trackers. We found traces. Weak, fragmented but real. Ships, not active, not moving, just drifting, dormant, hiding, waiting. We'd burned the heart of the Empire, but someone out there still had the bones. And if we didn't destroy them now, they'd rise again, stronger, smarter, colder. And next time, they'd make sure humanity didn't get another chance. So here we are, sitting on the edge of another war we didn't ask for. Earth still healing, children still learning how to live in a world without chains. But the fire's not out, not yet. It never goes out completely, not in us, not in them. So I pick up my rifle again, strap on the patched armor that still smells like plasma and dirt, and I whisper one promise to the sky. We end it all this time. Not just the Empire, not just the tyrants. We end the need for them. We called it Operation Ashfall. We didn't broadcast it. We didn't ask permission. We didn't hold council votes or send diplomats. This was a final war for a tired species. Not waged with pride, waged with resolve. Because we knew what would happen if we waited. The bones of the Empire would pull themselves upright, and next time, they wouldn't leave anything to bury. We launched from Earth in silence. No fanfare, no ceremony, just gritted teeth and old scars stitched into armor that didn't shine anymore. Our ship, the Ember Line, was held together with pain and metal salvaged from old graves. Rhodes piloted, Cade manned weapons, Camlin monitored the fusion cores. Kesh stood near the breech doors with her sword drawn, like she already heard footsteps. And me? I sat in the cockpit, staring out at a sky we were about to ruin all over again. The fleet was waiting in the shadow of a dead moon. 15 ships. No life signals. No energy pulses. But that's how they fooled us the first time. Preserver tech doesn't tick like normal machines. It pulses in rhythms, synced to something deeper. We didn't know who built this ghost fleet. We didn't know why they left it out here, untouched, unfinished. Maybe it was meant to launch when Azarath Prime fell. Maybe it never got the signal. Maybe it was waiting for us. Either way, we weren't leaving until it was dust. We breached the first ship manually. No auto docks, no code beacons, just hard entry, a decompression charge, a sealed corridor, and a team of survivors who'd learned how to breathe in fire. Inside, it was exactly what we feared. Alive, not moving, but alive, like a body in a coma, waiting for pain to wake it. Hundreds of chambers, not filled with people, filled with templates, human, alien, hybrid, even red breed. Someone had copied us. Our DNA, our structure, our neural upgrades. They weren't just resurrecting the Empire, they were building the next version of us. Stronger, colder, obedient. We moved fast. Cade and Camlin rigged plasma charges to the ship's core. Kesh and I split off to disable the cloning tanks. The halls were dark, but not silent. There were whispers, voices from the walls. Not spoken, not real, just residue. Memories stuck in circuits, rage caught in steel. Kesh asked me once if I ever feared becoming one of them. The machines, the monsters, the ghosts. I told her I already was. The difference was I remembered who made me this way. The fleet didn't fight back. Not yet. We cleared 4 ships, then 5, then 6, and on the 7th, we found her. She wasn't Empire, not anymore. She wasn't human either. She called herself Eliara, a preserver shell wrapped in what looked like human skin. Female in shape, ancient in presence. She didn't attack. She didn't run. She just stood in the central command chamber and said, "I have waited for you." Rhodes leveled his rifle. Cade stayed quiet. Camlin scanned for hidden systems. I stepped forward. Why? Because you're the only ones who understand. You didn't win the war, you broke the cycle, and that makes you dangerous. So you built a fleet. No, I inherited it. They were going to deploy it after your extinction. I was meant to guide the rebirth, but you didn't die. So what now? She tilted her head. Now I offer you the only thing that matters, control. Rhodes laughed, a dry, bloody sound. You think we want a throne? Eliara smiled. No, but you want to make sure no one else sits in it. She gestured around the ship. This is the key, a living fleet, self-sustaining, capable of peacekeeping, exploration, war. You could rebuild Earth. You could protect it. I looked at the others. Camlin looked conflicted. Cade stared at the floor. Rhodes just waited. I asked her one question. What's the cost? You, the fire in your blood, the legacy of rage, the leadership that understands what survival requires. Cade stepped forward. No. Just that. No explanation, no justification, just no, because we'd seen what power does when it wraps itself in good intentions. We didn't crawl out of one empire to build another. We set the charges. Eliara didn't resist. She just watched. As we walked out, she said, "You'll come to regret this, not now, not soon, but one day when the next wave comes, and Earth is soft again, you'll wish you had kept the sword." I turned back, tired, worn but clear. Then we'll sharpen a new one, ourselves. We destroyed every ship, one by one, no salvage, no retreat. 15 silent graves in orbit, turned to drifting ash and molten steel. We left nothing behind, not even a signal. Let the stars forget what had nearly risen. Let the universe never see this scar again. When we came home, there was no parade, just Ember, standing at the edge of the launch field, holding the same piece of chalk she used to draw with. She didn't run, didn't cry. She just looked at me, and I finally saw it. Peace. Not in the world. In her. The war hadn't made her cruel. It hadn't twisted her into something hard and bitter like us. It had made her still. And maybe that was the victory we never expected to win. Camlin returned to the new council. Kesh vanished again, into the snow, into the dark, into the places where ghosts feel more at home. Rhodes stayed near the South Range, building shelters, telling kids lies about the stars just to make them laugh. Cade? He finally laid down his weapon, took a forge in Zone 2, started building tools instead of weapons, said metal felt better when it was used to grow something. I stayed on the outskirts, near the ruins of Fort Spine, where it all started, where I could still hear the echoes, but not every day, not as loud. One night, Ember brought me a new drawing, not of war, not of ships, of a tree, big, thick, roots deep, branches wide, and behind it, a small figure standing in the light. I didn't ask who it was. I just looked at her and said, "We'll build that one day." She nodded. No words, just belief. They called me a lot of things in the old days. Fire-tongued, the Blade of Vireth, the Ghost General. But now I'm just a man sitting beneath a sky that isn't on fire. And that's enough. It has to be. Because we didn't fight for peace. We fought for the chance to find it. And in that space between silence and memory, we did,